They don't answer to the UN, they don't answer to NATO, and for a long time, they officially didn't exist. They are called the Wagner Group, and what they've built across Africa is not just a military operation, it's an empire. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how a private Russian army managed to plant itself in the heart of Africa, and what they took in return, because it was never really about fighting. It was about something far more valuable. We'll get to that, but first, you need to understand who these people actually are. Wagner is not and never was a normal military contractor. Most people think of private military companies as something out of a Hollywood movie. Trained professionals, legal contracts, rules of engagement. Wagner operates in a completely different category. It was founded around 2014, believed to be backed by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a man who started as a hot dog vendor in St. Petersburg and somehow ended up running one of the most feared private armies in the world. His nickname, Putin's Shift. For years, the Russian government officially denied Wagner ever existed. No press releases, no admission, no accountability. That's the whole point. Wagner gave the Kremlin what every government secretly wants: military reach without fingerprints. They showed up in Syria, then Libya, then slowly, quietly, Africa became their main theater of operation. Wagner didn't invade Africa, they were invited. And this is the part most news coverage completely get wrong. Wagner's playbook isn't conquest, it's leverage, and it works like this. A government is struggling. Maybe there's an insurgency they cannot control. Maybe the military is weak. Maybe there's a coup brewing, or one that just happened. Wagner shows up and offers a solution. We'll protect you. We'll train your soldiers. We'll crush your enemies. And the price? Not always money. Sometimes it's mining rights. Sometimes it's exclusive access to natural resources. Sometimes it's both. The Central African Republic was one of the first major African deployments. The government there was under pressure from multiple armed groups. Wagner moved in, provided security, and in exchange, they get access to gold and diamond concessions. The government got protection. Wagner got leverage over one of the most resource-rich, poorly governed territories on the continent. It was a template, and they were about to copy it everywhere. The footprint. Let's run through the key countries, because the scope of this is something most people have no idea about. Mali. In 2021, Mali's military junta expelled French forces that had been fighting jihadist groups for nearly a decade. Within months, Wagner was on the ground. They took over counterinsurgency operations, but reports quickly emerged of Wagner fighters being involved in civilian massacres, including the incident at Mora in 2022, where hundreds of people were killed over 5 days. The UN investigated. Wagner denied. The junta protected them. Sudan. Wagner's relationship with Sudan goes back to 2017. They helped prop up Omar al-Bashir's regime, trained Sudanese forces, and secured gold mining operations that funneled hundreds of millions of dollars back to front companies connected to Prigozhin. When Bashir fell in 2019, Wagner didn't leave. They just made new friends. Libya. Wagner backed Khalifa's forces in the Libyan civil war, providing snipers, artillery operators, and air defense systems. Why Libya? Because Libya sits at the crossroad of African migration routes, oil fields, and Mediterranean access. Control Libya, and you control a choke point. Mozambique. Mozambique had a different problem: an Islamic insurgency in the northern Cabo Delgado province, right next to some of the largest natural gas deposits ever discovered in Africa. Wagner deployed, things went badly, Wagner withdrew, but their presence highlighted just how far their reach had extended. Burkina Faso, Niger, Madagascar. After successful coups in Burkina Faso and Niger in 2022 and 2023, Both new military governments reportedly made contact with Wagner representatives. Madagascar saw Russian political consultants, many with known Wagner ties, embedded with the government. The pattern is the same every time: instability, an offer, a deal, and then resources start flowing. Wagner isn't just a military force. Here's how the money works, and this is the part nobody talks about. Wagner secures a territory, a shell company, usually registered in a third country, sometimes the UAE, sometimes Serbia, signs a mining concession with the local government. Local labor is used. Gold, diamonds, timber, whatever the resource is, gets extracted. That material gets exported, often through informal or underreported channels, and the revenue flows back to Wagner-linked entities, bypassing international sanctions. The UN panel of experts on Central African Republic estimated Wagner-linked operations were pulling tens of millions of dollars from that country alone annually. Scale that across 12 countries, you start to understand why this was never really about fighting terrorism. The fighting was the entrance fee, the mining was the business. The mutiny changed everything and nothing. In June 2023, Prigozhin led a short-lived armed march on Moscow. Within 24 hours, it was over. 2 months later, his plane went down in mysterious circumstances over Russia. The official story? An accident. Almost nobody believes that. So what happened to Wagner in Africa after Prigozhin's death? They rebranded. The Russian Defense Ministry formalized control. Wagner's African operations were reorganized under a new structure called Africa Corps, but the same personnel, the same tactics, the same deals. The brand died, the empire didn't. Wagner's story in Africa is not over. Africa Corps is active, Russian influence is expanding, and the next phase, whatever it looks like, is already in motion.